I think the chairman, crime is out of control and everybody knows it. More importantly, everybody knows why. When you defund the police and you have prosecutors who go soft on crime, you get more crime. This doesn't take a genius to figure this out. We've done field hearings in New York, field hearings in Chicago. Everybody tells us the same thing. And frankly, when you disparage the good men and women who put on the uniform, risk their life every day in our streets, you also get a shortage of police officers and more crime. Never forget, bad guys aren't stupid, they're just bad. If they know there are less police on the street to stop them and they're not going to get prosecuted if they do get caught, they do bad things. That's what we all got to understand. This is as basic as it gets. So I want to thank our witnesses for being here. Thank the chairman for this hearing. We have heard this in New York and Chicago, and we're going to other cities. We have to change this. And we have to begin to say to our law enforcement, thank you. Thank you for doing a tough job. That's what's at stake here. Mr. Chairman, I thank you again for this hearing and our witnesses for being here today, and I yield back.
Deputy Mayor, D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson said there is not a crime crisis in Washington, D.C. Do you agree with him?
Oxford defines a crisis as a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger, and so I would say that we find ourselves in an intense time of trouble or danger. So I would say there is a crisis anytime someone's a victim of crime in the district, regardless of the number.
Mr. Chairman, it sounds like we've identified part of the problem here with the D.C. Council when somebody will not acknowledge that there's a crisis. And by the very definition, Ed, as the Deputy Mayor said, there is a crisis.
Madam Deputy Mayor, are people more or less safe this year compared to last year in Washington, D.C.?
Sorry, I can't say whether they're more or less safe. I can say that crime is up, and so long as anyone doesn't feel safe, then that's an issue for us.
Would higher crime rates be one of the more important indicators as to whether or not people are more or less safe?
It would be an indicator as to whether or not people feel more or less safe. So it's something that we certainly look at in determining that.
I don't know. I think people could feel unsafe even if they were safe. But this doesn't seem to be a delusion, right? The cases of sexual assault rose 111% over the course of a year. Homicides increased by 38%. Motor vehicle thefts doubled, increasing 106%. Instances of arson over 125%. And carjackings by 55%. Why do you think that is?
There's a host of complex reasons why that's the case. You've heard some. We talk about our ecosystem, policy reasons, right?
Do you think those soft on crime policies are one reason?
I don't know that I would say soft on crime policies. What I would say is that there's a number of reforms in policy that have been made in the district that we believe need to be adjusted, which is why there's been a number of proposals from the mayor, legislation passed by the council to take a look at where we're getting the type of impact that we don't want.
I agree with Mr. App that the only way this works is with collaboration. And so what do you think you would highlight as like the main policy change that the mayor has proposed that could maybe put some downward pressure on this rising violent crime?
Sure. There's a host of proposals that the mayor made related to penalty enhancements, to aligning penalties for gun crimes with federal penalties. So there's those, but there's also those on information sharing.
So hold on, let's start with those though. But the underlying premise there is that enhanced punishment can have a deterrent effect and reduce crime, right?
We absolutely agree with that. Yes, that accountability is an important part of crime deterrent.
And I'm definitely not blaming you for this because it's not your job. But when we look at the fact that the prosecutor over the D.C. area has doubled their declinations, like from your standpoint on the front lines in city government, do you think that doubling the number of declinations goes in the right direction or the wrong direction?
I would say that what we believe is that if MPD has made arrests, that people need to be held appropriately accountable. We always maintain that, Mayor.
But like it seems like the underlying premise of appropriately accountable is to have penalty enhancements. That it's not as if you think people are being held too accountable. It's that they're not being held accountable enough, right?
There absolutely needs to be accountability for those who engage in violent crime.
Let me try to get our hands around what we need to do. So let me just get right to the heart of things, Ms. Appiah. What is the district doing to address violent crime? What is the district doing to address carjackings?
Sure. So we describe the ecosystem because it's important, and so the district's making investments in all of those spaces. The first is prevention. I agree with Mr. Pemberton that obviously enforcement is important, but to us, I have a public health background. Preventing crime is the best way to have less victims. So there's been significant investments made in violence intervention and prevention, which we're grateful for the investments that were made through the American Rescue Plan Act, which allowed us to put funds into violence interruption services and also victim services. The district grants $100 million worth of grants to providers, community-based providers.
But you're not thwarting or stopping your police from engaging right on the streets, arresting and bringing in carjackers.
That's correct. There are a number of policing strategies. All of these have to work together. So
and you are respecting the police for them to do their job.
Mayor Bowser is that you will find no mayor who is more supportive of the police than Mayor Bowser.
What is the greatest challenge for the district's ability to respond to violent crime?
One of it is the complexities of our federal local system. You heard Mr. App describe information sharing. We know that even law enforcement strategies like focused deterrence or otherwise work when the entities all work together. We don't have one governor.
My staff is making note of that right now. There's no reason there should not be information sharing. Let me move quickly, if you don't mind. I've got a short period of time. You enacted emergency legislation in July that changed the landscape of prosecutions. Do you want to just let us know how that is happening? And is that the same legislation as the prioritizing public safety emergency amendment?
That's correct.
So I want to hold up that this is law.
Correct.
Can you just give us a snippet? I've got so many other questions I want to ask Mr. App.
It increases the presumption for pretrial detention, which has led to more people being held pretrial. It increases penalty for things like unlawful discharge of a firearm. There's things related to pretrial detention for juveniles, which we know is an issue. There also was a companion bill that clarifies the ability of law enforcement to pursue in a manner consistent with safe policy.
Okay. Does the declination rate, is that coming down because the U.S. Attorney said it is?
I can't speak on behalf of the U.S. Attorney, but we are seeing more holds for those with gun crimes, so we can make, I can't say causation, but certainly a correlation.
So you have strong gun laws, but your surrounding neighbors don't. And so the issue is you don't block any citizen from having their guns, legal guns, but what you're seeing is the gun trafficking on the street.
That's correct.
And how does that happen?
So we have significant gun trafficking from our neighbors in Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. That is where the illegal flow of guns into the district is. So working with our partners like ATF and FBI and our federal partners is deeply important to help us stop gun trafficking and the flow of guns.
So you are committed to fighting gun trafficking and carjacking, things
Absolutely.
and robberies on the street.
Without equivocation, we are.
And so the alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, and FBI, for those acronyms may not be familiar, they can do a lot more, or you can work a lot more with them. Is that my understanding?
That's correct.